Number 4. Unity in respect of external government and discipline. Christ, the head of the church, gave pastors and teachers, helps governments for the work of the ministry, for the gathering together of the saints, for the edifying of the body, till they all come in the unity of the faith and knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man. Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 13, and 1 Corinthians 12, verse 28. The exercise of authority in government is necessary as a bond of union and a basis of stability in all societies. By means of it, the largest communities and even many nations may be made to coalesce and become one under the same political government. And can any good reason be assigned for supposing that the Church of Christ should be destitute of this bond, or that it should not be necessary to her union as a visible society? If every family has its economy and discipline, if every kingdom has its form of government and laws, shall we suppose that the most perfect of all societies, the house of the living God, and the kingdom of heaven, should be left by her divine head without that which so evidently tends to the maintenance of her faith, the purity and regularity of her administrations, and the order, subordination, unity, and peace which ought to reign among all her members? Whatever is necessary to her government and the preserving of her order and purity, either is expressly enjoined in Scripture, or may be deduced by native inference from the general rules and the particular examples which are recorded in it. Number 5. The bond of mutual charity and peace. This is the silken cord which ought to be thrown over all the others, and which makes Christian union complete. Hence, charity, or love, is called by an apostle a perfect bond. Above all these things put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Colossians 3, verse 14. A vague and erratic charity which soars above fixed principles of belief, looks down with neglect on external ordinances, and spurns the restraint of ordinary rules. Whether it seeks to include all Christians within its Catholic embrace, or confines itself to those of a favorite class, is a very feeble and precarious bond of union. True Christian charity is the daughter of truth, and fixes on her objects, quote, for the truth's sake which dwelleth in them, unquote. On the other hand, a bare and cold agreement in the articles of a common faith and external uniformity in the acts of worship and discipline will not preserve the unity of the Church. To, quote, be perfectly joined together, unquote, Christians must be of, quote, the same mind, unquote, or affection, as well as of the same judgment. It is by speaking the truth in love that they grow up in all things to their head, even Christ. Love must cement the union which faith has formed, and it is by the joint influence of both that Christians cleave to the Lord and to one another, in Him, with purpose of heart. Without mutual affection and its kindred graces, mutual consideration and condescension and compassion, forgiveness will not be extended towards injuries, forbearance will not be exercised towards unavoidable infirmities, offenses will arise, alienations will be produced, and the brotherly covenant will not be remembered. Hence the frequency and fervor with which the cultivation of a loving and peaceful temper is enjoined upon Christians. Put on, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another, and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. Colossians 3, verses 12 and 13. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice, and be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Ephesians 4, verses 31 and 32. Let nothing be done through strife or vain glory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem or better themselves. Let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4. Finally, brethren, be perfect, be of good comfort, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall be with you. 2 Corinthians 13, verse 11. Number 2. Now I go on to speak of the divisions by which the unity of the church is marred. Judah and Israel, originally one, and bound together by the most sacred ties, were rent asunder and formed into two independent nations, divided in worship as well as in secular and political interests. And this was followed by the usual effects of such breaches: rivalship, hatred, and mutual hostilities. Ephraim envied Judah, and Judah vexed Ephraim. Isaiah 11, verse 13. The same thing has happened to the Christian church. First, God has permitted the unity of his church to be broken in different ways. It has been marred and interrupted when her members continue to meet together and to keep up the external forms of fellowship as one society. This is the case when, instead of glorifying God with one mouth and striving together for the faith of the gospel, they entertain jarring and discordant sentiments about the articles of religion, and one is eager to destroy what another is building. When they do not walk by the same rule, nor mind the same things, when they fall into factions and parties, and when contention and every evil work, hatred, variance, jealousies, heartburnings, and evil surmisings rage among them, the spirit of division has begun to produce these bitter and pernicious fruits in the church at Corinth, even in apostolic times. Quote, "It hath been declared unto me of you, my brethren, that there are contentions among you. Every one of you saith, I am of Paul, and I am of Apollos, and I of Cephas, and I of Christ. Is Christ divided? And was Paul crucified for you? Or were ye baptized in the name of Paul?" 1 Corinthians 1, verses 11 and 12. Quote, "First of all, when ye come together in the church, I hear that there be divisions among you, and I partly believe it." Unquote. Quote, "I fear lest when I come I shall not find you such as I would, lest there be debates, envyings, wraths, strifes, backbitings, whisperings, swellings, tumults." 1 Corinthians 11, verse 16. Disorders and animosities of this kind may abate and gradually settle into a calm without the restoration of true peace. When a church no longer holds the head, but suffers the supreme authority of Christ and his spiritual kingdom to be invaded or shared by any creature, when the liberties and immunities which he has conferred on her as an independent society are usurped or surrendered, when her faith is subverted, her worship corrupted by human inventions, or her order and discipline overthrown, in such a case the bonds of scriptural unity are dissolved. Resistance may be overcome by the despotical exercise of usurped authority. Oppositions may die away under the paralyzing influence of an irreligious indifference and neutrality. But the union which is brought about by such means is an ungodly confederacy, and the tranquility which is enjoyed by such a society is like the calm which binds the stagnant and deleterious waters of the Dead Sea. At other times the dissensions which arise in the church prevail, and grow to such a height as to produce an open rupture, and the formation of separate and opposing communions. Even those who live in the same place, who had formerly taken sweet counsel together, and walked to the house of God in company, no longer join in the same acts of public and social worship. Altar is reared against altar, as if they did not serve the same God. One house can no longer contain them. One name can no longer serve them. They must be distinguished from one another, as well as from the world. This has hitherto been the state of the Christian Church almost in every age. In reviewing her history, she appears not as one great army marshaled under the banner of the Captain of Salvation, but as the company of two armies, yea, often as many armies, with banners bearing different and opposite inscriptions, and engaged in hostilities with one another, as well as with the common enemy of the Church of the living God. Thus, in ancient times, not to mention various lesser sects, the Church was divided into Greeks and Latins. In more modern times, Protestants have been divided into Lutherans and Calvinists, and in our own land into Episcopalians, Presbyterians, and Independents, with a great variety of other denominations, which it would be painful and impossible to enumerate. While we survey these mournful facts, my brethren, we must not overlook the hand of God, and it is proper to advert to this before proceeding to inquire into the immediate and proper sources of the evil. The malignant spirit could not sow the seeds of dissension and division, nor could they grow up and spread without the permission of the Lord of the vineyard. He has wise and holy ends for permitting them, and among others we are to be deeply affected with this, that he sends them as a punishment to a people called by his name. Do any ask, how comes it about that those who are joined by so many sacred bonds should be so broken and divided in judgment and affection? The answer is, the anger of the Lord hath divided them. Lamentations 4, verse 16. Yes, when they fall from their first love to the gospel, receive the grace of God in vain, do not bring forth fruit unto holiness under his ordinances, become conformed to the world, and have little more than a name to live, when they become vain of their numbers and their strength, and convert a holy union into a criminal combination, he permits the demon of discord to enter among them, confounds their language, that they cannot understand one another's speech, divides them in Jacob, and scatters them in Israel.